Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Shalom. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rabbi Gary Gans. I'm honored but saddened to be with you again. In February 2019, I also officiated at George's funeral. I recognize some of your faces from that time, and I acknowledge your presence. We come together to commemorate the life of Harriet Levy. As I mentioned, I officiated with you for the funeral for George. We acknowledge the presence of Stuart and Fran. Just before the ceremony started officially, I cut Stuart's ribbon. And I acknowledge that the last time we did this, it was on his right lapel as he mourned his brother George. And this time is on his left, as is custom, for acknowledging the loss of a parent. We also acknowledge his grandson, Daniel, who is streaming the service. We acknowledge his ethereal presence, if not his physical one, as well as Harriet's great-grandchild, Bruce Raphael, who is 6 months old. And we'll have an opportunity to see the video that's being formed here today to acknowledge that his presence was welcomed and acknowledged as well. Ma'ayan HaChayim, wellspring of life. We come together sharing our sorrow to commemorate Harriet's life. We recall the blessing of that life. We thank God for all that was true, good in her life, and for the precious memories which shall endure. Eternal God, Creator, her family and friends are bowed in grief and seek light to dispel the dark gloom which threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to those who mourn, for they are in distress. Bless them with your compassion. Ease their burden of sorrow. Send them light and peace. For it is written, "Fear not, as I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will sustain you with my power." And let us say, Amen. תרצי לבוא? תרצי לעמוד, לשיר משהו? כן? אוקיי. אל מלא רחמים? יפה. I continue with Psalm 23. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנודשה ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינחלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני מעגלי צדק, למען שמו. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures, and leads me beside the still waters. God guides me on paths of righteousness, and revives my soul, for the sake of God's glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. If one can have a favorite funereal prayer, mine is from Ben Sirach. I've shared it with many members of my congregation, even my own family from this very pulpit. It understands the sense of life fulfilled and its closure. The words echo for me through the eons as I share the words of Ben Sirach. We are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cried for the dead. Hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning. But remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace, and be consoled when the soul departs. He wrote, death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is constant illness. Is better than constant illness. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our few days in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time, but a good name, a good reputation, endures forever. We've been handed out a prayer prominent in many congregations, including my own, during the Yisker services, the memorial services during the course of our liturgical year. It's a moving prayer, and I'm going to lead us as we read it together. We remember them is entitled. At the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year, and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now part of us as we remember them. Today is a day acknowledging a vast spectrum of feelings and emotions. We think of the good times that you had with Harriet. You remember the sadness when we were here once before for George's funeral, but also the joy of family and friends and connectedness and support. And there's a text that I'm bringing in from the book of Ecclesiastes that speaks about that range of feelings of joy, acknowledging sadness at the same time. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And in fact, it is a time to speak. I'm honored to call on Stuart to come up to the podium. He will be offering his thoughts and Daniel's as well. Come around this way, please.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your kind words and prayers. I'm speaking for two. I speak for myself. I speak for Daniel. And I think in some sense I speak for all of us. I'll speak first for me, frankly, because Daniel's words are more joyous, and it's a better way to end. I think that one of the best gifts that parents can give to their children is a chance to understand them and to love them for who they are and who they were. At least that's my experience with my mom. Harriet was born in 1928, a year before the Great Depression. She was about 12 years old when World War II began, and in the 50s she was a young woman in her early 20s, and really, she was gorgeous. All of her pictures are just show her beauty, and she was a good-looking woman at every age. She married Bill Brooks, a handsome veteran. They had 2 kids in the early 50s, first George and then me 2 years later. Harriet was a great homemaker in the best tradition of her generation, the keeper of the flame of the family in the way it was kept in that day. When I was a kid, when lunches needed to be packed, she packed them. If cookies were needed to be baked, she baked them. If a kugel or a cake was needed, Harriet made it. For several years, she and Fran made latkes for her grandson Daniel and his classmates. It was a fun time for Harriet. It was a fun time for Fran. Of course, the kids loved them. Harriet had a mother's love of cooking. She was also a fun mom. If a dog wandered in, she'd probably let us keep it. When I told her a cat followed me home, which is a dubious story then as it is now, Harriet actually let us adopt it. I didn't realize it when I was a kid, but Harriet really had a soft spot for animals. She always had animals. Over the years, she encouraged all sorts of pets in our house. Dogs and cats, of course. We also had chicks and chameleons and guinea pigs and I think a hamster and white mice and turtles and I forget what else. But Harriet had a special sense with dogs. Dogs knew that Harriet was their friend. She wasn't a dog whisperer, as they say. She was a dog listener. I tried to remember all the dogs that she had, and there were just too many. A Great Dane, a toy something, multiple Dalmatians, a pointer, a couple of boxers, schnauzers, a dandy Dinmont terrier, Bodie, the French bulldog, which she and Irv got before that breed became the popular breed, the it breed. And at Ardencourt, she made friends with Luna, a Labrador retriever. Luna always sought Harriet out. And then there was an associate of Luna's, whose name I unfortunately forget. And she did the same. She actually jumped on Harriet's bed and nuzzled her. Dogs always came to Harriet. I must confess, and Lynn, you know this, that Irv and Harriet were dog spoilers. Every night at exactly the same time each night, Harriet and Irv would set out a bowl of ice cream for the dogs and for them. Once I commented that these were working dogs and they just didn't seem to be pulling their weight. And Harriet looked at me and said, "They're working hard at being our pets and they're putting on plenty of weight." Harriet had a great sense of humor and a very dry wit. She and Irv Loved word games like Boggle and Proquacky and Scrabble. She was very quick with words and with language, and some of us even got to experience her quick tongue and some of her sharper words. She was a terrific gardener. I mean, I'm a decent gardener. She had the green thumb. Barren house plants from less fortunate homes became luxuriant in her kitchen bay window, and seemingly without any effort from her, she just had that knack. Ultimately, I think Harriet shined bright as a teacher, like all moms do. Life was less kind to her in her last years. In short succession, she lost her, then George, and then she had to put Bodie down, and she knew that was her last dog. Happiness became harder for her to find. But 6 months ago, her great-grandson from Isabel and Daniel became her greatest joy, and she and I would flip, and Fran as well, we would flip through the album of Bruce pictures all the time. Bruce charmed Harriet as he charmed all of us. Harriet will always be my mom, and I'll always love her for that, but more than that, in her last years especially, she taught me how to accept her, appreciate her, and to love her for who she was at that moment. She was a fun and loving mother, a great homemaker, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a green-thumb gardener, a dog lover, and countless other things that made her personality. But at the end of her long and very full life, she taught me that she was who she was, and that was enough. Well, those are her son's comments, a bit more somber. I'd like to share with you Daniel's comments of the grandchild, which are a bit brighter. Daniel came up a week or two ago to visit Harriet and us, primarily Harriet and us, and was able to spend time with her when her end was near. And that was very meaningful to Harriet and to us. And with that, I'll read his comments. I'll try and put on a different voice. I can't speak to the experience of being the grandmother, but being the grandchild to my Nana makes me believe that being the grandmother was a great joy. And although I don't think she would have wanted to do the job, my Nana could have taught the course on bringing joy to your grandchild. Our bond, Daniel's bond and Harriet's bond, was built through the classic grandparent-grandchild activities. She would pick me up from school, feed me snacks, play games with me, let me watch TV, play with Duffy or Bodie, and she would cook me delicious dinner. She didn't mind as I flipped through old pictures, pulled out and rifled through drawers, and caused middle school havoc in her home. Writing all that out makes it seem like I caused her never-ending chores, but I believe she loved every moment. She would bring me holiday on candies, as well as any other day ending on Y. She would encourage me to play card games and word games. Pop-Up, she and I would spend afternoons boggling and playing Uno or poker. I still love these games to this day, and I wish I would have had her teach me other games that she played. I would have loved to have learned mahjong or bridge from her. During holidays, we would drive around and look at the light displays on houses. She would have a chocolate soda and string cheese for me in the car when she picked me up before we would set out on this journey. My wonderful parents, too conscious of how unhealthy and unnecessary these snacks were, may not have been the stronger supporters of this, or maybe even unaware, doubtful. They graduated with honors from Parents University, but hadn't yet attended Grandparents U, so they perhaps couldn't appreciate this joy and potential secret between grandmother and grandchild. But as the grandchild, I loved it. All right, just for the record, yes, Fran and I smelled the chocolate soda and the string cheese on your breath. We would ride around looking at the houses and I was mesmerized at the colors and the creativity. I didn't realize until years later how this was also helping me see the different places in my community and learn the streets and neighborhood in the different towns where I hung out. I was so lucky to have a Nana who created these experiences for me. They brought me smiles, made me happy, and created joy in my life. As a new parent of an infant, I now think about the type of grandparents my son has. I have no doubt his grandparents will be great. I'm sure they'll bring the same joys, experiences, and secrets to my son's life that my Nana brought to mine. I hope so, because my Nana was a fantastic grandmother, and I loved having her in my life. She created warm memories, fun experiences, and supported my youthful games, excitement, and exuberance. I love you, Nana. May you rest in peace. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you all.
Stuart.
Yes. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Daniel. And Stuart's selection of the community reading of We Remember Them so nicely dovetails with your comments and your reminiscences and connectedness that you and her family and friends have with Harriet through her years, and may those strengths always continue with you. You may have heard me have a cryptic conversation in Hebrew. I spot my favorite fellow retiree, and I invite the Chazan to please come up to join with me as we read the prayer, El Malei Rachamim, God the Compassionate One. Even in God's mercy, even in our harshest days, we remember the strength of God who supports us and brings us future happiness. You're going to begin with the Hebrew, and then I'll read the English translation. I ask everyone to please stand.
רחמים שוכן במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת הינדה אלקה בת זאב וחנה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תחיה מנוחתנה בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Harriet Levy, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she rest in the tranquility of shalom, of peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. The interment will take place at the Roosevelt Memorial Park. In the family plot that dates back to the maternal side to her own grandparents at the same cemetery. And, of course, alongside of George. Adonai miyadur bohelecha, miyishkon v'har kodshecha, holech tamid v'choel tzedek, v'dover emet b'lavavot, lo ragal al leshonot, lo asar ve'ehu ra'at, chepa lo nasa al kruvo, mizeh ve'enav im'as, et yireh Adonai yichabed, mishpal harav lo yamir, kaspo lo natan b'neshech, ושוחט ענקי לא הותח.